So we came up with our 2 or 3 meals for the week. I've gone grocery shopping, so let's get started with our meal prep. In this week's Power Hour, we're going to be making our turkey burgers. We're also going to be preparing our bell peppers and chicken for our fajitas. We're going to be making a fajita seasoning blend so we don't have to pull out all of our spices on a whole nother night. And then we're going to be making a yogurt dressing for our Buddha bowls. All right, as we get started with our Power Hour, you will notice that I've got my recipes right here at the ready, so I'm not having to scramble around to try and find where the recipe was. I've already got it printed out. The first thing we're gonna do is make our apple spinach turkey burgers. The first thing we'll do is grate an apple, and I've pre-washed all of my produce. And that's one thing that if you find that you're short on time throughout the week, right when you get home from the grocery store, go ahead and wash all of your produce before you even move it into the fridge or wherever it is that you keep it. You can always go ahead and wash it so it's just ready to go. All right, I've just quartered my apple and I'm going to just use a box grater. I'm gonna not use the big side, I'm gonna use the little side. And then into a bowl, we'll just grate. It doesn't matter what apple you use, whatever you've already got on hand, or whatever apple your family likes. Okay, so I've got all of the apple grated. One tip I like to have when I'm meal prepping is a garbage bowl. It's just a lot easier to just be able to dump everything into a bowl as you're going along. So I've got my grated apple. You'll see that it's just all grated up. There is a little bit of moisture in there, and that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna actually leave it. So after I've grated my apple, the next thing I'm gonna do is add my spinach. I thawed it in the microwave, and now I'm actually gonna wring out a lot of the moisture because this has a ton of extra moisture in it. What I'll do is actually wrap it up into a towel and then squeeze out the moisture, so you can watch me do that. You could do this with paper towels or just a tea towel that you've got. All of that. The next thing that I'm gonna add is my ground turkey. If you've never used ground turkey before, I really encourage you to try it. There's lots of different types in terms of how much fat it is or how lean it is. Oftentimes people will buy an 85-15. That means it's about 15% fat. That's what most people are used to eating. However, if you can, I really encourage you to try the 93-7. It's gonna have a lot less fat in it. But with that said, we know that fat equals flavor and it also equals moisture. So that's why I'm adding in the spinach and the apple. It's gonna add back a lot of flavor. It's gonna add in a lot of that moisture that's lost when we take away the fat. Okay, to this, I'm gonna just add salt and pepper, and that's really it. It's such a simple recipe. The hardest part truly is grating the apple. So I'm gonna do 1 teaspoon of salt and I'm gonna do half a teaspoon of pepper. So 1 teaspoon of salt, and then half a teaspoon of ground pepper, and that's it. So now I'm gonna use my best kitchen tool, my hands, and actually mash this burger up, and I'm gonna make it into 6 patties. Now you can make it into 4, but they'll be really huge. So especially if you have kids that you're cooking for or grandkids, I would encourage making a little bit of a smaller patty. So again, most people aren't used to having apple or spinach in their burgers, but I encourage you to give it a shot. You never know. Okay, so that's all mixed up. The easiest way I've found to make sure your burgers are even is to just use your hands and kind of score the meat into those 6 burgers. And then another trick that I'm gonna do is when I'm storing the burgers, because I'm gonna make them and then put them into this glass container, pop them into the fridge, and then we'll pull them out on the night that we're ready to eat them. I like to put parchment paper between each of the burger patties. It's just easier to have them separated out like that. They don't stick together when they're in the fridge. So I'll be using these guys. I just use these parchment, the pre-cut sheets, which are made to fit most baking pans, and then I just cut it into 4s. So that's that. So here we go. I'm gonna make my first patty, and you're just making normal burger patties. Nothing special or fancy about it. But if you think about it, doing this ahead of time, how easy is it when you get home, you can just pop these out and get them onto the griddle or into your skillet, and you can have burgers super fast. Another thing that you could potentially do, I'm gonna make more than 6, I think. Another thing you could potentially do is make these into meatballs. So you could have the same recipe. You could use it for burgers one night, you could use it for meatballs a whole nother night. Burgers are also one of those pretty highly accepted foods. So if you have kids that aren't huge on eating greens or fruits, this is a really good way to kind of sneak it in without being too sneaky. We don't want to be too sneaky. Okay, so your burgers are done. All we have to do now is pop the lid on them, and they're ready to go in the fridge. If you wanted to get really fancy, you could always print out a label, or you could pop the recipe on top of here just so that you know exactly what's in there. Totally up to you, whatever works best for you. I like to just, obviously I can see what it is, that's why I like the glass containers. Then I know I can just pull this out and it'll be ready to go on burger night. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is we're going to prep some components for our sheet pan chicken fajitas. One thing I do is get storage bags, freezer bags, whatever you've got, and I always label them. If this is something that's gonna go in the freezer, I definitely would use a freezer safe bag and always put the date on it. However, since these are just gonna go in our fridge, then I just wrote chicken or fajita chicken, and then I wrote the bell peppers and onions, so I'll know what to put in this bag, and then I put chicken on this bag, so I'll know which one goes in which. So the first thing I'll do is we're just gonna prep 2 bell peppers, so chop these guys up, and then a red onion as well. Now, if your family likes other vegetables, this is really versatile. You can use whatever vegetables you like. Now, one thing I will preface this with, which I should have said at the very beginning, I am not a trained chef. I am just a home cook. So I'm sure there are better ways to chop and use a knife and do all those things. I'm just here to try to get a healthy plate in front of my kids and in front of my family. So I'm gonna chop these just into strips, kind of like you would if you were ordering fajitas somewhere. So the beauty of meal prepping truly is that it just allows you to have a little bit more time and be a little bit more free when you come home, because you're not having to pull out the cutting board, you're not having to pull out the spices and all the things to get dinner on the table. This is that prep work that takes a little bit of time, but if I'm doing several meals at once, then truly I'm just having to get my cutting board out once. I'm just having to get all my spices out once. So it really does save a lot of time versus if you were to make each of these meals from start to finish on separate nights. Now, when I'm doing this, I normally have a 4-year-old running in here asking for snacks, or I have my 11-month-old who loves to gnaw on raw peppers, so she's always stealing some too. So not all the ingredients always make it. Some of you might be able to relate to having a busy kitchen when you're in there. Okay, so there's that, and then I'm just gonna chop up an onion. For the onion, you can use half of an onion on this because the onion's pretty potent, and then you can save the other half of the onion for the Buddha bowl or even to pop on top of your burgers. Totally up to you. What tricks do you guys use when it comes to keeping your eyes from watering when you're chopping onions? I think I've heard a lot of them. Run the water next to you, like have your sink going. I've heard pop them in the freezer beforehand. But essentially what it is when you chop an onion, it releases this, what turns into an acid, into your eyeballs, so that's why they water. I think the best thing to do is just to wear goggles. I'll spare you guys that though. All right, I'm just kind of dividing these guys up into there. And I think that I'm gonna keep the other half to use for the Buddha bowl and for the burgers. So I'm gonna go ahead and just thinly slice those. And then I'll grab another baggie and pop those in there. All right, so that first component's done for the fajitas. Just gonna make sure and get all the air out. The less air, the better. Less chance for it to oxidize and turn brown on you. So I've got just about a pound of chicken, and I'm just gonna cut this into bite-sized pieces. They'll cook really fast that way, especially on a sheet pan. This is kind of one of those one-pan dinners that just gets easy, makes life easy. Trim off some of this visible fat. Keep it as lean as possible. And then just chop it up. You could use any protein source that you like. This is just boneless, skinless chicken breasts. They were on sale, so that's what we are going with. You could use really anything you like. Or if you don't even want to use meat, you could always do something like tofu or black beans, if you're into that. And all these recipes you will be able to download off of our website so that you'll have them at your fingertips. And like most of our Cooking with Community Outreach recipes, I just encourage you to use that as kind of a baseline and then add to it as your family likes different things. Make sure and add those different ingredients. Keep it fresh. All right. I am going to wash my cutting board and my knife, wash my hands, and then we'll get started on our next meal component. The next thing that we're gonna do is make our fajita seasoning. Now this is definitely something that you could do the night of, but I just find that it's a lot simpler if I go ahead and make the seasoning blend now. That way I don't have to pull out all of my spices again, including all of my measuring spoons. That just tends to make a big mess. So if I can get it done today, all the better. I'm gonna be using just the cutest mason jar you've ever seen to put our seasonings into, and I'm gonna have my recipe right here so we can follow along. The first thing I need is a tablespoon of chili powder. 1 tablespoon of chili powder. And we're gonna use half of this for our fajita blend night, and then the other half you can use when you make it on another week. We're gonna do 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin. Maybe we're going to use the cumin. 1 teaspoon. Half. We're going to do 1.5 teaspoons of paprika. You can always buy the pre-done like taco seasonings, which are fine. I just like the taste of these homemade ones. Plus, if I wanted to, I could even double or triple this recipe, and then I would always have it in my spice cabinet. I would just label it and then be able to pull from it when I need to. Okay, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic. One. 1.5. If a little extra garlic gets in there, it's okay. We love garlic in our house. 1 teaspoon of onion powder. So simple having the spices all lined up right here. And then 1/2 teaspoon each of salt and pepper. All right, that's it. Shake her up, And the fajita blend is completely done. It's ready to go. I don't have to pull out all these spices again when I'm ready to cook this. Okay, the last thing that we're gonna do is prepare our yogurt dressing for our cauliflower rice Buddha bowl. This is such a tasty dressing and it's really versatile. So I like that it can be used on different things. So I might use it on the Buddha bowl one night, and then I can actually use the rest of it on just a plain salad, or maybe over a different kind of grain bowl that I like later on in the week. So this is super simple. It's a 1/4 cup of Greek yogurt, and I'm using a plain non-fat Greek yogurt, and I'm actually gonna make the dressing in the jar again, so I can just shake it up and pour it on the Buddha bowl when the time comes. So just a 1/4 cup plain non-fat Greek yogurt. Doesn't matter which brand. I like using Greek yogurt because it gives it a little bit of a thicker texture, and it also really pumps up the protein. So just an easy way to get extra protein into a meal. And you can use Greek yogurt any place that you would traditionally use, like a sour cream or a mayonnaise. It has that same kind of tangy flavor, but no fat, lots of protein. So I'm always a big fan of that. The next thing I'm gonna add is a 1/4 cup of orange juice. If you've got some orange juice in your fridge, by all means, just pour that in. I'm actually gonna use some fresh oranges today because I'm feeling fancy. One trick to get more juice out of citrus fruits, you can always roll it on the counter like I'm doing, or you can always pop it into the microwave for a couple seconds. Seconds, not minutes. It will blow up. So that really helps kind of get the juices going. Try not to get it in your eyeballs. And I can usually get a 1/4 cup of juice out of one orange. All right. So the orange juice adds a really bright flavor to this dressing. It gives it a big punch of flavor, and I love using citrus when I am needing some flavor without adding a lot of calories or fat. Things like lemons, limes, oranges, those are always really great options to just boost the flavor of whatever it is that you're making. Serve it with a lime wedge, squeeze a little lemon on top, or use orange juice or something like that for your liquid. The next thing is 2 tablespoons of honey. Got the Big Gun honey. We like honey in our house. If you are concerned about the sugar content, you can always omit this part. You can just use half the amount, whatever you're comfortable with. Clean hands. All right. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I know, that's different. Don't be concerned. It tastes so yummy. I promise. One thing with this is the recipe has some mandarin oranges and some blueberries along with the cauliflower rice and such, and that's so yummy. It's really a bright flavoring with all different fruits and things. However, this also could transfer into the fall flavors, winter flavors, if you were gonna do something like some roasted sweet potatoes. So this dressing really has that warmth to it with the cinnamon, but also the brightness from the orange. So it's definitely one that can kind of go across multiple seasons. Then we're gonna just do a pinch of salt and a pinch of pepper. Do that in my hands so that it's not more than a pinch. And then that's it. So this guy, I'm just gonna shake him up. And he's ready to go. And guess what, guys? We're completely done. So this was preparing meal components for 3 different meals for the week. Some of them might have leftovers, which can be eaten for lunch the next day or on a whole nother night. So I hope that you found that this was simple, pretty quick. I think it took us about 45 minutes to prepare all of this. And so hopefully this sets you up for a really productive and wonderful week that is not overwhelming. So let's, I guess, look and see how it looks when we prepare them each night. So when you're making your spinach turkey burgers, you definitely don't have to use a griddle like this. You can just use a skillet or whatever else that you normally cook your burgers on. I'm just using this because it's easier. I have more surface area to cook all the burgers at once. So because of my parchment paper, super easy to get these guys out. And I've got my griddle just on medium-high heat. And you want to cook these until they reach about 165 degrees internally. So I'll just use a meat thermometer to gauge the temperature. We'll let them hang out for a little bit on this side, then we'll flip them over and they'll come together in no time. So on turkey burger night, obviously it's just a matter of cooking the burgers and then pulling out whatever accompaniments you want to go with it. I've got some whole wheat hamburger buns here, some ketchup and mustard. You can also use those diced red onions that we had left over from our fajita night. And two, if you're gonna make smaller burgers, even using like a slider bun could be really fun, especially for kiddos. And feel free to top it with as many vegetables as you like. Sliced tomatoes, fresh lettuce, even some cheese, and then you could serve anything alongside of it that you like. We like to do just those frozen packages of sweet potato fries. Those seem to be, they go over really well in our house if you're wanting like a fry that's a little bit healthier. One thing I do want to note is that when you're looking for a whole grain in any type of bread product or grain product, the one thing that you can really look for is on the back, on the ingredients, you'll see that the first ingredient should say whole. If it doesn't say whole, then it's not a whole grain. If it says enriched or bleached, that means that it's not a whole grain, so just pop it back on the shelf and try to find you a whole grain option. The other thing that you might see is it'll say 100% whole wheat, and then you know that you're getting a whole grain as well. So that's just a quick tip. Sometimes they can be a little deceiving and a little tricky. They'll just say wheat bread or wheat buns, and really it's not a whole grain. It just has wheat flour as an ingredient, but if it's not the first ingredient, then it's not a whole grain. So just a quick tip there. We'll check our burgers. I don't want to overdo them. And I'm just looking for 165 degrees. So just the whole wheat bun. We like to do a little bit of mustard, a little bit of ketchup. And then we'll just pop these guys on. So we finished our apple spinach turkey burgers. They came out, they smell delicious. I just cooked them on a griddle. You can cook them on a skillet or out on the grill if you'd prefer. I built it using a whole wheat hamburger bun with a little bit of ketchup and mustard, but feel free to add on whatever other vegetables, a little bit of cheese, whatever it is that your family likes. And you can even do a build your own burger bar. So set out your burgers and all the different things that you'd like to put on top, and your family can come through, build their own burger, and a healthy meal is served. All right, so now it's Buddha bowl night. I'm gonna show you one of my favorite tricks when it comes to choosing a grain or a rice for a Buddha bowl. I'm actually not gonna use a grain at all. I know that cauliflower has kind of been the darling of the last couple of years. I love to do frozen riced cauliflower. Now you are welcome to buy cauliflower and rice it yourself in a food processor or with a grater. However, I am a little bit lazy and I like to just buy the frozen one. So what I'm gonna do is pop this in the microwave. The cook times vary depending on how big your bag is, what kind of temperature your microwave cooks at. So this one has about 4.5 minutes. So I'm gonna pop it in the microwave, let it cook for 4.5 minutes. And then when it gets out, I'm gonna teach you the trick to actually liking cauliflower rice. Okay, our cauliflower rice is done cooking in the microwave. I'm gonna let it cool off just a little bit before I start handling it, but I'm gonna go ahead and assemble our Buddha bowls. I wanna show you how quick and easy this comes together. I'm choosing a hearts of romaine. You can choose whatever type of lettuce that your family likes. You could do spinach, you could do butterleaf lettuce, whatever it is. I'm just gonna divide this among 4 plates. So this is that pre-washed lettuce. You can always re-wash it if it makes you a little nervous. The next thing I'm gonna do is add some color with some carrots. Now you can do just plain shredded carrots, which I normally do, but the store was out, so I got baby carrots, which is just fine. I'm gonna just chop these up pretty small and then just sprinkle them. Bell peppers would also be really beautiful on here. Really, it's just whatever you like. All right. The next thing I'm going to add are some mandarin oranges. So I'm going to just open the can and I'm actually going to drain these. They're packed in orange juice, which I always prefer to have it packed in juice versus syrup, but I still like to drain it off just so it gets that extra juice off of there. You could also cut up a fresh orange if you wanted to do that. I'm always looking for a little bit of a shortcut, so for me this just works a little bit better. Plus, another tip, my daughter loves mandarin oranges. Actually, both girls do. And a lot of times, if I'm trying a recipe that might be a little bit new for them, so all of this lettuce might be a little bit different, putting in an ingredient that I know that they love will make the meal a little bit more acceptable to them. So knowing that there's mandarin oranges on there, Gracie might think, hey, this has got one of my favorite foods, let me give it a shot. It's just one of those mom tricks. They say we eat with our eyes first, so the more colorful the plate, I know the more excited I feel about eating it. There's those. Next up, I've got some fresh blueberries. Drizzle those in there. Again, this might be a really highly acceptable food, so adding those can make a big difference. Now again, with the Buddha bowl, this one is kind of more of like a spring summery with the oranges and the blueberries and such. It's real bright and flavorful. If you wanted to carry this into the fall and winter months, you could definitely add more of those cooked vegetables. So some roasted sweet potatoes would be really nice on here. If you wanted to do more like Mediterranean or Italian, you could always do some artichoke hearts or some sun-dried tomatoes. Just make it your own. This is kind of the beauty of a Buddha bowl, is it's whatever you want it to be. Oftentimes it's just whatever we've got in our cabinets or our fridge. The next thing I'm going to add are garbanzo beans. They're also called chickpeas. If you've ever had hummus, then you have had garbanzo beans. I tried to find the no salt added version. They didn't have it when I went to the grocery store this time. However, if you ever have the opportunity to get the no salt added version, that's what I always recommend. It just saves you so much sodium. You can always add a little bit of your own salt at the table. If it doesn't have a no salt added version, always rinse your beans before you add them to whatever it is you're eating. That's going to remove about 40% of the sodium, which can be a big deal when you're trying to watch your sodium. So I'm going to drain these guys off, and then I'm just going to rinse them out. And I just do this in the can. All right. Again, I'm just going to divide these evenly. If you wanted to get fancy, if this was a night that you had a little bit extra time, you can always roast your chickpeas in the oven. So just pop them onto a rimmed baking sheet, top them with a tiny bit of olive oil, salt, pepper. You could do some paprika, some cumin, and roast them until they're crispy, and then pop those on top, and that would add a really nice crunch. However, we're just going with simple and quick, and so out of the can it is. The next thing I'm going to add is a sliced avocado. This is going to add some of those healthy fats in there. Add some creaminess as well. Avocado is one of those really heart-healthy fats, but you still have to be kind of careful because it is really calorie dense. So I'm just gonna pop off some avocado. Oop. This is a fun part for the kids too. That's all. You could always use the other half of the avocado on your turkey burgers as well. Cauliflower rice. I feel like this has come in and out of trend. I feel like for people who have tried it and have kind of turned their noses up at it, I want to teach you a trick that you might be forgetting to do to make it actually taste really yummy. You have to season it. So it comes in a bag and it's great and it's super handy because it's steamable. You don't have to do a whole lot to it. However, it is just plain old cauliflower. It doesn't have a thing added to it. So I tend to get pretty seasoned heavy on it because that adds a lot more extra flavor and it makes it a lot more palatable. So I'm gonna go in with some garlic powder, some onion powder, some salt and pepper. You can always mix and match. You could add different stuff if you like, but this is gonna make a world of difference. If you've tried cauliflower rice in the past and you didn't like it and you didn't season it, then try this trick and it'll make a big difference. And I just season it right in the bag and then I just stir it up. You could also do some like Mrs. Dash seasoning. Just grab a spoon, stir it up. And then I'm just gonna spoon the cauliflower rice right over top. Again, you could use whatever grain you wanted. If you wanted to do a brown rice, a quinoa would be really nice in here. Lots of different options. A bulgur would be really good. This is definitely one of those meals that if you're trying to be carb conscious, it will really help you out. Using cauliflower rice in place of rice in any recipe is gonna really drastically cut the carbs. And then last but not least, we have our dressing that we pre-made. So it's already ready to go. Doesn't have any other junk in it like some of the ones that you get off the counter have, or off the shelf, I should say. So I'm going to actually use my spoon and then just drizzle that dressing over top. That cinnamon really adds such great dimension. And then you don't have to necessarily make this onto 4 plates. You could always make it into a huge bowl, pour your dressing in, and then just toss the salad, and then people could kind of grab out what they want. However, I like it this way because then you can kind of control the ingredients that go onto your plate. So this is a super healthy, really, really filling with all this vegetables, all the fiber from your lettuce, your fruit, your cauliflower. It's just gonna be a dinner that I think your family will really like because it's gonna keep them full for a long time after they eat it. So hopefully you won't be hit up with, can I have a snack soon after? All right, it's fajita night. I came home and I preheated my oven, which that's another tip. If you know that you're gonna be using your oven, go ahead right when you walk in the door and hit preheat so that it's ready to go as soon as you are. We roasted our chicken and our fajita vegetables, which are just bell peppers and onions. Roasted them at 425 for about 30 minutes or so, and they came out, they smell amazing. And I've also chopped up a little bit of avocado to use as well. We're gonna be using a whole wheat tortilla. You could also use corn tortillas. You could use taco shells, whatever it is that your family likes. And we're just gonna have taco night. So I've got my tortilla shell. You could always heat this up in the microwave. You can always heat it up if you've got a gas burner. You could always heat it up over that and kind of get it charred a little bit. Essentially, you're just going to fill your tortilla with all of this yummy goodness. Make sure to get lots of chicken in there. A few avocado slices over top. And then I'm gonna finish off with a little bit of mild salsa. To this, you could always add in jalapenos if your family likes really spicy stuff. You could add in fresh cilantro, lime juice would be really nice. Again, these are just the basic parts of the recipe, but I encourage you to make it your own and add whatever it is that your family would enjoy to make it really acceptable. So there it is, so colorful, full of fiber again, lots of protein as well, so it's gonna keep your family full well after dinner time. Well, I hope that week 1 of our meal prep series went over well for you. I hope that you see that the prep part doesn't have to be overwhelming, and I hope that you also see how much it can actually help throughout the week to get a healthy meal on the table in no time. My goal is for you to have healthy options and again, make that healthy button the easy button. We'll see you next week as we dive into week 2 of our meal prep series, and we'll actually be adding another component, breakfast.